This is our trip to Rheinfels Castle in June of 2025. So Rheinfels Castle, or sometimes it's called Burg Rheinfels if you're German especially, it's located on the left bank of the Rhine River in St. Goar, Germany. Originally built somewhere around 1245, and over the centuries it was expanded until it became the largest fortress in the Middle Rhine Valley. We'll talk some more about it later. This is the parking lot where we got off the bus, and while the scenery was beautiful, once we turned around and took a look up the hill, we realized that we were hiking up to that castle. We had to hike up all the way through those hills to get to the castle. And so there everybody was. And the day had started out a little bit on the temperate side. But as the morning started to wear on, it started to get a little toasty. I think the people that showed up in shorts and t-shirts, even though we were advised as tourists in Europe that only people going to the gym wear shorts and t-shirts, or only little kids wear shorts and t-shirts, I think that those people were probably a little bit wiser than us. So we got to this point and I said, oh, this is going to be an easy climb, and it's going to be nice and shaded, and everything is going to be just beautiful. It's striking view of the Rhine, nothing to this climb. And that the tour was actually explained to us as being not too physically demanding. I'm not sure who decided that this tour wasn't going to be physically demanding, but I think you'll see in just a few moments how wrong they were. One of the things that you can see is that the area has been developed, so you can see that there's commuter train tracks, and there was a street that we crossed. Here we are climbing stairs that they thankfully put into the side of the hill for us. The stairs were covered in moss. They were slippery. It was not a particularly safe type of a climb. I think if you were in the United States and you had these kind of stairs, somebody would be out pressure cleaning them every day, and there would be rails on both sides, and there would be signs all over the place saying be careful, but not in Germany. Here we are about halfway up, and that building up there is the castle that we're headed for. The white building is sort of a lookout area, and you can see that they were farming, or they are farming, right in the side of the hill. We didn't find out what the plants were, but they look like either beans or tomatoes or something like that. So this is the view about halfway up. Again, the Rhine is just amazing. Any view of the Rhine from any angle is gorgeous unless you're in the cities. There's the parking lot, and there's the bus that we came in on. Just went past it. So we're only about halfway, a little less than halfway up, or a little more than halfway up. Here we are climbing further, and again, no rails, just stairs, climbing up. And we'll be at the castle soon. So something to talk about for a minute is the castle itself. Much of the castle is a ruin, and the only thing that's standing really is shells of what the castle used to be. There's a hotel there, and there's a little bit of a museum, but that's what it looks like when you finally get up the hill and you are approaching the castle proper. The main entrance that we're coming up on will be off to the left. This is the parking area, and in retrospect, once we got up to the top, we realized that the bus could have driven us up there, but they didn't. And I guess that's okay. I think we all kind of needed the exercise. We've been eating pretty well on the boat. But there's the hotel and the gift shop and a little museum. I took a moment. There's the castle entrance proper, which we'll see in a second, but I took a moment to take in one last panorama of the Rhine River to give you an idea of how far we had actually had to climb. It was quite a climb. People were tired. I was sweating. And I'm in pretty good shape, but it was quite the trek up the mountain, and I'm going to call it a mountain. All right, so now there's our guide, and that's the entrance to the castle. Again, it's a square clock or gate tower. And once you're inside, you can see how much construction they're doing. This is a granary, so it's a large storage area. And the area is the way you get into the rest of the castle. So they sort of funnel you through this room. So we started in this room, we ended in the same room, but you'll see that a little bit later on. So here we are going through the underground, and these are underground. This is dug into the side of the castle, into the side of the hill. Passageways. We spent a lot of time going through passages like this. So you can see we go from the light to the dark, and there's Robin going back out to the light again. No rails, slippery, sweaty, hot. And again, they were doing some renovations while we were there, so you can see we're in a courtyard area. And then they took us off to the left, and we're going to go through a part of the castle here where the knights and the people who were soldiers were protecting the castle. So you can see in this part that this faces the river, and anybody that was going to attack the castle only really had two ways to get there. They either had to come up the hills, which are off to the right in this picture, or they had to come up over the mountain on the backside, which would have been off to the left. So that was one embankment where the knights could have used arrows and bows. And this would have been an area where we could see the residents of the palace and some of the places where people were living.
There's thick, and by the shape of these loopholes, you can recognize they were built before the invention of gunpowder. They are very narrow on the outside, and they are wider on the inside.
What our guide was trying to tell us there was that was where they were able to use arrows and bows, as well as apparently there was an area right where we were standing that was where the chamber pots were emptied. And what the soldiers would do is they would take the refuse that was there, people's waste, and pour it down the hill at anybody coming up the hill that was trying to invade the castle. So this was an open area toward the what I would call the back of the castle, and you can see that this faced the open hills. And then we turned around to the left and took another pathway that led us back into an area where we were able to connect with the part of the castle where crops were planted for food, and also there was an extra part of the castle that was built in addition. And this was the embankment area where that addition was built. So we're going to just take in the walk a little bit, and I'll be back. For what it's worth, you can see the gentleman in front of me is sweating pretty well. I was sweating pretty well. It was starting to get really warm out. And that was one of the crazy things about this trip, is that one day it would be really warm, the next day it would be really cool. We never really knew what to expect. One day it was raining, one day it was sunny. It was raining a lot though. So this is where we were walking down into the area where the secondary building was. And when I say secondary building, it's an addition that was built. It wasn't part of the original main castle. But it was still huge. And this area was used for a bunch of different purposes. And we're going to speed up the walking. They didn't actually take us into that secondary building to show us what was going on in there. There was a lot of castle to see, and we didn't have a tremendous amount of time. But what you can see is that this is all in ruins. None of this is working, and none of it is occupied. So this is really just more of a historical site. And as we're walking along, the guide takes us to this hole in the side of the hill that we are looking at, and everybody's going, we're not going down there, and everybody kind of just trudged their way in. It was a little tough to get in there because it was kind of low hanging, but we managed to get ourselves in there. Robin was a real trooper, but there we are. And so now we are going down and under, and just when we think that we're going to see something interesting, we find out that we are in basically another area that was used as a protection or a defense area in the castle. So people would line themselves up at the windows and shoot arrows. And they didn't have a lot of room to shoot, so they were kind of looking out there and just firing away. But this is how the castle was defended. And so then we were moving along through here. It was pretty dark. The camera did a good job of picking up as much as it could. It was pretty dark, and they actually had us use our phones and turn on our flashlights on our phones so that we could see where we were going. You can see people with their flashlights on. Again, just an amazing amount of walking. If you end up going to Castle Rheinfels, be prepared to walk, because there's a lot. And I think one of the things that struck me most about the castle was that we were going in and out of catacombs. So we're going up and down, and there was so much underground and so much that was dark and not built out very well. It seemed like this castle just kind of grew organically over time. Here we are climbing. So now we're climbing up to it took a while. The stairs were very steep, and it was a circular staircase. But here we are climbing up to the area where there were some of the living quarters. We really didn't see much of it. And then we walked down a hallway, and there we are climbing back down. Again, a lot of renovation going on. I think that if we had come a different time of year when there wasn't so much renovation going on, it would have been a little bit more impressive. But still, the sheer size of the building, the amount of rooms, the amount of construction that went into making this place in the 1200s was just incredible. And here we are going back down again. Circular staircases, very steep, very narrow stairs. That was something I found a lot in Europe, is that the staircases were very steep and very narrow. And now we're going to, in a moment, listen to our guide, who at the end of the tour, and there he is, he's kind of waving us on, trying to get us to move through. He decided to regale us with a song, and we'll hear from him in just a few moments. But here's the one of the final stops along the way. We're out in the courtyard area, and here we are back in the granary. And this is where our guide brought us at the end, and let's listen.
This is a springtime song. It's a song of my own.
Springtime.
And it's simply called Springtime Song.
Yes. And then the rest of our trip was back onto the bus and back to the ship for lunch. And we were glad to get on that bus.